Hey everybody, welcome to the Forest School Podcast. This podcast is all about exploring the fascinating world of forest school education and sharing our evolving perspectives on this ever-changing field. We want to take a moment at the beginning of this episode to thank you, our dedicated listeners, for joining us. But before we dive into this episode, we'd like to address something important. If you're just joining us, or if you've been with us since the beginning, you may have noticed that some of our earlier episodes sound a bit different. The Forest School Podcast began as our own personal journey through the world of education, and those early episodes reflect a time when we were still learning the ropes. While we're proud of our growth and progress through the years, it's essential to acknowledge that those early episodes may not meet the technical and content quality standards of our more recent episodes. Education is a field that's constantly evolving, and so are our views and insights. Our early episodes served as a public diary of our learning journey, complete with all the mistakes and learning experiences that came with it. We believe that it's essential to keep these episodes available for posterity as they remind us how far we've come. However, if you're here for the most up-to-date discussions on education and our best quality recordings, we'd encourage you to explore our more recent episodes. Our views have evolved, our production quality's improved, and we're excited to share our current perspectives and knowledge with you. So, whether you're here to trace our journey from the beginning, or you're seeking the latest insights into education, we're thrilled to have you along for the ride. Thank you very much for being part of the Forest School community. Let's embark on this journey together. Right.
Hello.
Hi guys. We are in the woods, covered in basically head to toe in cob and clay. From we've been making what is it?
Romano British updraft kiln. I have to put on that special voice when I talk about it too.
I see.
It's very technical. With some local children. Local children. We must credit the Blackdown Hills AONB, who gave us a grant.
Paid us to do it.
Yeah, or gave us a grant from their Sustainable Development Fund to build it because it promotes an awareness of the area's
We're in an area known
heritage.
Historically for pottery and for kilns. And
we've got our Devon red clay, which we've been digging out and mixing with straw, and it's got some sand in it. And
it's beautiful.
Building a kiln. It's looking amazing.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about cooking as part of Forest School sessions. So, should we start with what is our favourite thing that we've cooked? I think that's maybe the way to start.
Ooh.
My favourite thing is very recent, but it is the last batch of pizzas we did in the cob oven.
Yeah.
So, not technically in a Forest School session because it was in the one-off thing.
It was an autumn festival for families.
But it was just... I think so I've spent the summer trying to get good at pizza dough and pizza cooking.
Well, if you look at the journey, I think maybe that's why you're feeling it. Like you're saying, you've spent the summer, but it's actually, if you track it way back to the first cob oven that we had and the first pizzas we did, we did were tortilla wraps bought from the shop. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
With some tomato puree and a handful of cheese on the top.
Yeah.
And we did it with toddlers.
Yeah.
We have traditionally made pizzas as a kind of end of block activity with groups, and that's what we did for quite a long time, and the kids would decorate their own, and that was all really good fun. They'd bring in toppings and stuff, but now the pizzas you made the other day, delicious.
Yeah, proper homemade dough that I'd let it rise and I'd put the yeast in properly and let it ferment and do all the things, and it just was it's just a different world, isn't it?
And I guess that's that might be your favourite thing in terms of for you like you've been on that journey, haven't you?
Yeah.
And they also tasted really delicious. So watching people enjoying those and going, yeah, that is actually really nice, because often you make something and you never quite know how it's going to turn out. And I think that's a part of the joy for me, that like we never ever weigh anything. So I know some people weigh stuff at home and then bring it in, like if you're baking, and measure ingredients and bring it all up in separate containers and whatnot, or even bring scales in, and we never do that. We just chuck it in, don't we?
That's worth saying. So because we're working on this forest school cookbook that is very close to coming out, and I went through, after testing it here with the kids, they kind of pointed out to me that, like, because we'd written it like a normal kind of recipe book, they were like, well, what is 400 grams? Well, what is
Why had you written? I didn't know you'd written like that.
Because in my head I was thinking of like, well, I always work out this much butter, say, because on the side of the packet it says, doesn't it, like, you cut here, you cut here, you cut here. Right. But the kids had no concept of that. So I've rewritten everything in cups.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, I think the recipes
or handful or bit, or, you know.
I think the recipes I submitted for that talked about like the texture or consistency of the thing instead of like, so. But
yours was slightly different. I was thinking there's some more complicated ones that need the right thing. But going back, because you were saying not knowing how it's going to turn out.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that why the pizzas have been more of a favourite for me than, like, because we make quite a lot of cake, but cake, even when it's rubbish, is still sugary, like it's still cake mix, which is nice.
Yeah.
So, but when pizza's bad, it's like, oh, this is bad. So that's why I think I'm more impressed by the pizzas, because I would have known if they were bad, but if it was like the cakes are really good. Yeah. We're getting better and better with like Dutch ovening those and getting the coals in the right place and all those things. But they taste good either way.
But that was another bit of a journey in terms of cake, because we started off buying instant cake mix, and because everything we cook is vegan or has a vegan version, and then, you know, say vegan margarita or a non-vegan margarita, but we buy the instant cake mix and then use lemonade or soda water instead of the eggs, and then we thought, well, we want to make a cake, but we don't have any cake mix, so the only ingredients we ever keep on site are dry things, so sugar, flour, cinnamon,
pantry staples,
oil. That's the only stuff that we keep here, so we can be quite spontaneous. If a group says we want to make a cake, we were like, oh, we haven't got any instant cake mix, but we've got baking powder, we've got something.
It's just suddenly thought about it.
It's just like, actually we could do that, and we do have some fizzy lemonade, so let's just try it. And we did it from scratch, and it was completely delicious, and probably, you know, fewer preservatives or whatever in there, so that
and probably was also cost us like a fraction of the price.
Definitely.
It was just crazy.
And that's and I loved that, actually, because we did that with the kindergarten kids, didn't we? And because you're not weighing anything and you're talking, that makes you, I think, talk about the ingredients and why it's going in a bit more. So they're saying, well, this baking powder, how much do we need to put in? You're like, well, the reason we're putting it in is to help it to rise, and you talk about the chemical reaction. So like, how much do you think would, you know, and you start having those conversations as opposed to blindly just reading some numbers off a recipe and going, oh, well, we're doing that because it says so. You're much more in control, and I really like that. And it sort of takes away some of the fear of failure, and you're like, in a way, like, it might work, it might not, it really doesn't matter, we're just gonna bodge it. And then when it does work, everyone's like, oh, it worked. It actually tastes
thing ever.
But there definitely is something about eating the same food. If you literally made the same thing and gave it to people in a house, or gave it to them out here in the woods, they just, everything tastes better. It just does. And why that is, I don't know. There's probably something happening in the brain.
Do you know what? I think it is. You heard of mindful eating?
No.
So mindful eating is it's a mindfulness technique, surprisingly, and it's where you shut down almost everything that you possibly can, and if you can't keep your eyes closed, it's like put a blindfold on, and you just, so there's no sound, you focus on the sound of your fork hitting the plate, and then you eat it, and and there's nothing else to think about, and it makes your food incredible. Like, it just is a crazy experience, and it makes you appreciate what you do and don't like about foods a lot more. Whereas if you're like, so I don't like rubbery pasta. Like, I my wife has a joke that I would eat pasta raw, like, if I could. But I've done it before and eaten it, and like pasta that if we're having a chat or we're watching, we don't have good eating hygiene, so we have like the iPad on and we have maybe something else going on, and we're trying to keep Baron in his chair or whatever, and you just go like, oh, just get the carbs in.
Yeah.
But as soon as you slow down and eat it, and you're just kind of like, oh, this is slightly firmer than I'd quite like, and you're just engaging on it at a different level. So I wonder if it's that, in that there isn't as much to focus on here. Eating something here, you watch people and they genuinely get their bowl of whatever we've cooked or their plate with pizza on it, and they stop and they just eat that thing.
It may well be as well in a type of because we never kind of start a session and immediately eat something, so people are eating towards the kind of middle or back end of a session, aren't they?
Yeah.
By which time perhaps your sensory wise you are more attuned not just to the taste, like you're saying, really you're not just attuned to the taste but the warmth of it in your hands in the bowl, or the smell of it. Like from being outside, your senses are heightened.
We should have had some food. This is a really bad idea to do this without food in front of us.
I did just cram a couple of biscuits in my face, but it's not really the same.
And did you appreciate the texture of the biscuit?
No.
Okay.
It was literally, I've done some exercise, I need some food now. We made some apple pancakes in the kindergarten the other day.
They were amazing.
And I really enjoyed the way that we cooked with that group, because sometimes it gets a bit bottlenecky when we're cooking with a group, especially with toddlers with their parents, and everyone's waiting for their turn to mix the bowl or whatnot, and the way that this happened was a lot more free flow. So we just had loads of bowls and loads of plates, and so everybody mixed up a little bit of the batter, and there was a chopping area and a peeling area, and everyone just sort of naturally moved around without any adult having to go, okay, does anyone want to go?
And there was quite a nice vibe, although some of them kind of had their plate and cut their apples up. They were so okay with the idea that those apples were going in communally.
Yeah.
There wasn't this like, but I've stirred this, so it's mine, so that's my cake. So that they were just all kind of like, oh, cool, we're making a thing.
Yeah.
Like we're just, you know.
And watching some of the children with the knives and with the peelers, I was just completely blown away by how competent they were. And I sort of thought, whoa, you just would not, I don't know. If you'd said, do you think this child could competently use quite a sharp peeler to hold an apple that's bigger than their hand so they can't quite grip it very easily? And they go, absolutely not, that would be insane. And they're just like, I don't need any help, I'm fine.
Sometimes that's like, it's almost like vibe based though, isn't it? Like if you've got a parent behind you going, whoa, then like if someone was doing that behind me, I think I'd probably cut my finger, because I'd be going, the hell are you so tense about? Like, whereas just being able to kind of calmly go, okay, I can see them and I know I can see what they're doing, and I will step in if I need to, but I might not need to, and all that, the apple pancakes are just great because they're so simple. And I think that's also part of what makes cooking in forest school sessions, is that it forces you to simplify everything. You really cannot get down to, okay, you have to go, what is 100% relevant for this? Is it like scraping out a vanilla pod? Because if it is, we can do it. But actually, if we don't need to, I'm not bringing, especially, we're very lucky that we don't have to bring equipment on site. It's all here. But if you were doing stuff in a school, you get down to like, herbs, self-raising flour, water, right? We're making bread. That's it. Maybe some salt.
And lots of even adults can't believe that you are able to make bread out of those ingredients. It's like, really, it's that simple. It's like, it really is. And then the variations that you can do with that in terms of making it sweet, giving it different flavouring,
But then that makes, I think it's Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, who has a big, a lot of his writing and stuff is about like letting each thing taste like itself. He's like, actually, then if you cook it like this, you will enjoy the taste of turnip. Turnip has this beautiful taste. We don't need to hide it. And our cooking, because you have to simplify everything down, is like,
it's about apples.
It's just about the apple and the taste of that. They are in season.
We have loads of apples. We're going to cook apples 20 ways, and it's going to all be about apples. I quite like that it ends up having a bit of a festival vibe to it. That I also really like the sessions where we kind of intertwine story or another activity with the cooking. So we've done a very interactive storytelling version of Stone Soup, where the kids or the participants kind of help in
we
the
actually
story
did
and have
stone soup, didn't we?
and
Like they
have
had
the
carrots and we
vegetables,
put them in and we did whatever.
Yeah.
And that's very true.
which gives it more of a kind of connection somehow to
And
the
I
ingredients.
I mean, I'm speculating wildly now, but I wonder how many children are involved in the cooking process at home. And although more and more people have these like open plan living spaces, which is almost going back to an older time, isn't it, where you had like one room in your house, and you would have seen parent do the cooking, or you would have seen someone lighting the fire and all these things. And actually, whether we're bringing that back here, because you can see every step of the process. We don't ever take it into the cabin, hide it, add some secret ingredients, and then come back out. It's like,
apart from the pizza dough that you've been bringing, we never pre-prepare anything at home and go, we've done this stage, now you're gonna add to it.
The only reason I prepare the pizza dough is that it needs a whole day to prove.
Yeah.
Like if we were running like a 2-day camp, I would 100% make pizza dough and be like, right, we're gonna put it here and we're gonna let it go, and it's
there's definitely something about having been involved in the process and eating it outdoors and it tasting better, which means that children who would never touch that kind of food with a barge pole go, this is completely delicious, can I have more? And it's like, you've basically been saying that onion, garlic, tomato, carrot and some vegetable stock and a bit of salt is like the most delicious thing you've ever eaten, and please can I have some more? And you can see like the adults either in the school or parents just going, okay, there's no way on earth if I served that up at dinner they'd be like, you're having a laugh, I'm not eating it. And that's really magical to see. I really like that. Yeah.
It's I think it has a lot to do as well. I've been talking a lot about this week about John Gatall and his communities versus networks, and the idea that a network is you see people in one context, so you only see them at work, or you only see them at the gym, or you only see, I mean, in some respects, you only see your parents at home. Whereas a community is where you see those people in every context of their lives, and that you used to be able to see mum or dad at work because you used to have to go, or you used
more of a village kind of
and you'd see not only the postman delivering the post, but you'd also know what house he lived in. You know it sounds very like I'm kind of pining after rural Britain, and I'm not. What I mean is that we're just there's an element of like, the more contexts you can see someone in, I think the more rounded a relationship you have with them.
And also of the world, because you see all the possibilities, you understand what it is to be a grown-up. Like if you're a child, you're like, okay, these grown-ups are doing this and this, that's something I might like to try and do, and I understand. I can see them running their family, and I can see them working, and the different types of jobs that they're doing, and the kind of people they are. And
as we are, I've heard people say that we're one of the only animals that can learn from stories, so that we can learn more quickly. Like, you shouldn't eat the poisonous thing, because we know in stories that it's poisonous. We don't have to keep going out and every generation go like, oh, that was poisonous. And so seeing more people in more context just gives you a wider pool of stories to draw from and go, that's quite an interesting job, or did you realise some people react like that in this situation, or and I think it's quite this is very going into the weeds now.
How is this getting on to cooking?
Because cooking is a thing that's in some families is hidden away in the kitchen, and doing it here brings us closer together, because it's such a leveler of like, you can see I'm eating the same thing as you. And I'm enjoying it the same as you.
I wonder if that was, like I was talking about this morning with our toddler group. So we had some 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and adults some of whom had never met each other, all sitting underneath a very
makeshift
but very beautiful tarpaulin and clothes peg shelter that the children made, and they were all sitting together, all eating popcorn from the fire and just having a really lovely chat. And it wasn't the grown-ups having a chat and the kids having a chat, it was them all equally taking part in the conversation. And I wonder whether that would have happened without the popcorn. That's never entered my I remember appreciating it and going, God, look at that. That is magical.
Yeah.
And I thought about how the making of the shelter and sitting in it had created that environment and that vibe.
Yeah.
But I think all sharing the popcorn together, and they were sharing it. So some of the children were offering adults they'd never met before popcorn from their plate, and you could hear them, oh, thank you. You know, it's really generous.
It is a massive leveler in that, like, because they're all eating the same thing, your opinion of how it tastes is as valid as a grown-up's opinion, and all these other things that in a way, I don't know many families that all with young children in particular that all eat. I think in Britain we have a bit of a thing of like kid food
and adult food,
and I don't know that many other countries do it, especially European countries. I think have a bit of a well, they just eat smaller versions of what we're eating. What are you on about? So to all be eating the same pizza, the same cake, the same popcorn is an experience that you don't often have as a leveler, because, well, I mean, what else is there that kids can have an opinion on that adults won't instinctively kind of go like, yes, but I've done this before, or right, but you don't understand, or no, I'm eating a different thing.
And that works the other way around as well in terms of, I would say, maybe you could, it's a generalisation, but you could say that some of the more treat style food that we cook here, like roasting something sweet on a stick or making donuts on the campfire and things like that, aren't necessarily, like, when we do that, often like the kids will be eating and you'll have to say to the grown-ups, like, you're allowed to eat it too, like you're allowed to do it too, and then you just see that, like, oh my goodness, it's delicious, like a naughty, like sugary treat, and they're like, oh, it's not just for the children, there's enough for us, oh my goodness. And then you get like parents going, oh, are you going to do donuts again, because I completely love the donuts.
Some stuff.
And that's really fun, that kind of brings in an element of play for the grown-ups that they wouldn't experience in everyday life. It's not very often that you just make yourself a donut, is it, at home?
And bonds the grown-ups together. Children are very quick to bond and go like, cool, we're a network now. I didn't use the word network intentionally there, but I think for adults they still retain a bit more like, oh, okay, but your kid's that one and my kid's that one and all this stuff. And we were saying earlier, weren't we, that it here more than other parent groups, perhaps the parents do talk to each other and it kind of encourages that. And I wonder whether the food is one of the things that does that, because actually well, I tell you what, I know it does that because they do eat, but they don't talk to each other when they're individually having the snacks that they've brought for their own children.
That's very true.
They all sit round the fire and they can all be sat at the same time eating, but they don't talk to each other when, like, we've brought a pot of grapes and okay, we've brought some little biscuits, and we're no talking. But as soon as you introduce like, we've bulk made some popcorn, here's a common element. Here's this. You want to talk to each other, and the common element is something that children latch onto really quickly, because they will find it and go like, we're both girls, or like they'll go like, we both got ponytails, you know, they'll find those things. Whereas grown-ups, if you tried to go like, we're both girls, you go, no, there's too many differences. So to have it's like an easy option of like, do you want to both talk about the popcorn? Gives you a like, yes, I can talk to them about that. I can say, and going back to what you were saying about it not always going well, it bonds people. Like, people bond through hardship, right? Horrible but true fact about people. And so like, us collectively like slightly burning something or undercooking something is then such a group experience of like, oh god, we've all pitched in and all done the thing. And
also the fact that, like I was saying about the, you know, it's nothing is perfect and nothing is precise, kind of opens up the cooking to everybody, even if they think they're rubbish, which adults often say, oh, I just can't cook, or I can't bake, or I can't, you know, because it's all so rough and ready. No, it's not precious. So that time I was thinking about when we made the apple pancakes with the toddler group, and lots of adults got involved in the cooking over the fire. You know, it's not like the oven is separate and the door is closed or the hob is small. It's like that big space around the campfire, and people were doing sort of just gave themselves jobs, didn't they? And they were like, oh, I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but it really doesn't matter.
How bad can it go? Yeah. I think that is true, and I think there are lots of outdoor centres, perhaps, where the cooking is separated. So I know, I don't know firsthand, but I've had scout leaders tell me that when they do the big scouting things, there's like a canteen tent,
Yeah.
and there's the cooking area,
Yeah.
and basically they don't go in it until it's their turns.
Yeah.
Thing to camp, but we have basically no boundaries between anything here, and I mean, it has its downsides because we do have to be more vigilant around, like with the pizza oven. You just have to stand there and be like, just make sure the kids don't put their hands in or whatever. But it does mean that once another adult has seen you do something, like open the door to check it a few times, then they're quite comfortable going like, okay, I'll just have a little, okay, fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's not on a pedestal. And we've said before that one of the great things about forest school is and outdoor ed in general is that because the range of the breadth of skills that you could have is so massive. You know, we've talked about before that we both are kind of like, no, I don't know much about mushrooms. Or you go like, oh, I'm an okay whittler, but I'm not fantastic. And to be able to go in front of the kids and go like, I'm not great at cooking. Like, I kind of think this and this will make a thing. Like, that's about as expert as I need to be. And it's so, then you can almost see with some kids them go like, all right, cool. Like, I'll try that then.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it goes wrong. And it's...
Yeah. And I think there's probably some methods and some things that have been forgotten that cooking in this kind of environment keeps alive as well. So I was thinking about the episode of Bake Off where they're like cooking pitters over things.
Yeah.
And just once you've done it a few times, then you think, God, this is easy. And this is actually how people used to cook all the time.
Yeah.
And doing it and keeping that tradition alive, I really like that element of it as well.
And it's such a... You do sometimes go back and home and just kind of like... I haven't literally done this, but sort of almost metaphorically go home and sit in front of the oven and go, oh... like my oven's on now.
Yeah,
that's how easy it is, and I know exactly what temperature it is.
The wood and lit the fire. Yeah,
and I just walk away, and I know it'll stay the same temperature, and that's such a different.
Yeah,
experience.
I quite enjoyed trying to make the hot cross buns at home with the same recipe, as in made up recipe that we've used here, and then completely failing, and we going, oh, I thought they'd taste better at home. I just automatically assumed that my oven would be better than the Dutch oven and the campfire because it's a more consistent temperature, and they were absolutely inedible, like worse than anything we've ever cooked here. And and then I did work out that part of the reason was that our Dutch oven was getting up to 400 degrees,
right,
and that was why. Which is interesting, which is a whole other facet to outdoor cooking and opens up a lot more possibilities.
It's interesting, isn't it, that ovens
especially
don't
with bread
go that
and
high.
baking. Yeah.
And that's never... I don't know that you can get a conventional oven that goes that high.
No.
Yeah, it is interesting. And it's kind of... I don't know. I think doing stuff at home is quite often... The food that we make here is... I know the hierarchy is bollocks, but the Maslow thing, I would say the cooking that we do here is never on the starvation level. It is always an added, like, do you want to try and make this thing?
Yeah.
Which gives you a different appreciation for it, but also gives you a different, so much more freedom with it. I know there are definitely times where at home, Baron, who is 18 months old, wants to help chop something or peel something, and not through any desire to be controlling, but just because that's the only potato we have in the house. I can't let you play with it and potentially throw it on the floor. I have to. So we are very lucky to have a food be a luxury and an experience. I
guess a play experience, really.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to,
and I wasn't sure.
Well, it is play. That's the difference. It's like play. It's playing. It's cooking and it's playing.
It's playing with the adult toys, isn't it? I don't mean the adult toys. I mean playing with the.
On that note, next week's podcast.
I mean playing with the toys of the toys that. I can't phrase it in a way.
Why don't you just say it's like sensory play? It's the kind of sensory play that a child might do.
No, because that isn't what I mean. No. What I mean...
We're not usually allowed in that adult sphere, and now we are.
What I mean is that... so I've heard people relate this to technology, in that if you were going to grow up to be a blacksmith, you probably spent your childhood, when the blacksmith wasn't there, playing with the blacksmith tools.
Yeah.
They weren't ever shut off, right? Whereas cooking is something that, because we don't always have it as a play object, it's kind of like, well, cooking, you know, like we've said, cutting the fire, making keeping the fire going, getting it all prepared, putting it on the fire is a lot of stuff to do. Is a lot of work for a luxury, for play. And so to be able to say to the children, you get to have this whole process as a play experience, is very luxurious is the wrong word. But do you know where I'm going with it? It's
like
actually
indulgent,
there are many
extravagant.
Yeah, there are many places in the world where to have a fire and to cook something for the sake of it might not go well, but it might be fun, is absolutely out of the question.
Yeah.
You know, that's I think where I was going with it.
Right.
It's normally shut off as a like, no, this is a precious resource, so we need to treat it. Only the adults may use it, and actually giving children access to that.
Although probably in those places the children are completely competent and amazing at cooking.
Exactly. But because they get to play with the tools, because they get to, you know, whereas I guess it goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Because we don't let children see less cooking happening at home, then they don't know how to use the tools, and so the idea of playing with the tools, they're less competent and all these things, and I think I've pulled it back from where I took it.
And I think on that note, we
should
should leave it
just
there.
call it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Bye.
See you next time.